Have you ever tried to have the sex conversation with a partner and then you see it fall apart? And so you've decided you've worked yourself up in order to have this conversation. You see that there's a lack of sex, and you think, if I just tell her how I feel about this situation, she should respect the fact that I've got these terrible feelings that I'm feeling because of that lack of connection, and hopefully it should put us on the right track in order to get things back. In fact, this is the advice that if you typed in on Google and said, "How do I change a sexless relationship?" This is one of the biggest advice that could tell you is that sit your partner down, and when you sit them down, tell them exactly how you feel. And this is the worst advice that has been ever given on the internet, because I've spoken to thousands of men, and they've taken this advice, and it has always ended up horribly. And there's some few reasons why it ends up horribly, and we're going to dissect this one, and hopefully I can give you at least a few of the reasons why it goes horribly. But I can literally speak about this, sitting your partner down, and why it's a bad idea. I can speak about it for the next 2 months. And I'm not joking. I mean, I can literally teach you over and like, there's so many things about this that is wrong, and so many things about this where you, how you interact and how you. Anyways, let's dive straight into it. We've got our AI bot that's going to be reading us the post. It's a Reddit post. So in this post, he actually says he's trying to talk about the lack of sex within the relationship, and whenever he mentions the time period between the lack of sex, she turns around and says you're a pervert for actually trying to keeping track of the time scale that we've not had sex. So there's a few projection stuff going on here. So I think you're now all caught up to where we are now, where we're going to get him actually explaining on the post here through the power of AI. So here we go.
For example, when I initiate, she'll just tell me that we had sex a few days ago or last week, and when I tell her, for example, that it was 5 weeks ago on a Friday, she'll start to be angry and tell me that I'm a creep, a pervert, and that only one would keep track of those kind of things, and she'll shut down all type of conversation. I
So, like I think I briefly mentioned it, some of it is just projection stuff. Usually, when you sit somebody down to have this conversation, sometimes most men, not just, I think most people, whenever they're having an ill feeling around their relationship, they feel like it's something that is happening to them, but then they actually really don't see themselves in the other person's shoes. The lack of sex is troubling for the relationship for both parties, even for somebody who is low libido. When you sit your partner down and start talking about the lack of sex, generally they already know that there is something that is wrong, so they will see a shift in your behavior. The only difference is that they might not know how to resolve it, and because of that helplessness or no knowledge of resolving it, in this case especially on the low libido person, they might not understand why is it that I don't feel attracted to the other person, or why is it that I don't feel like I can feel arousal, or I cannot allow myself to go to arousal. Why do I feel a level of discomfort when it comes to sex? I obviously love this person, I obviously want to do something about it, but I don't know what to do. And that lack of knowledge or lack of understanding of how to actually get to that place can be extremely frustrating, and that person can really, in some cases, because they some people don't want to take responsibility for those type of things, they start actually trying to find issues with you in order to make sense of it. Sometimes, and again, this is, like I said, I'm guessing with this. So in this case, I think she's already in a place where she's looked into the reasons why, and instead of trying to use that as an opportunity to grow, she then says, okay, maybe it's not my fault, maybe it's his fault. Again, when it comes to sex as well, it also depends on what is a sexual history when it comes to sex, and what was the introduction into sex. Now it depends. When I say introduction into sex, um, most women are introduced to sex to a certain level from a very very young age. And when I mean sex, I don't mean the intercourse, but things that are centered around sex. So, for example, my daughter, when she was, I don't know, 2 years old, when she was wearing a dress, if she sat in a certain way, instantly I would have to tell her, you need to sit with your legs like this or shut or whatever. But it's the first time where, as a dad, I feel like I need to protect her because somebody might see her sit in that way and might feel some type of way. And I know it sounds wrong, but it's obviously that's the first time there's some introduction towards. Uh, they've got no idea what the concept of sex, but exactly that's when it's introduced. Now, when it comes to over a period of time, that continuously happens, where some, depending on who they meet, who the people around them, they may make them feel discomfort around sex. So they might look at them as if, and then I spoke to a lady once. She said she was 8 years old and she encountered a man rubbing himself, looking at her, and instantly it made her feel some type of way, and she felt really dirty, and she found it very difficult to recover for the rest of her life. Even though she got married with children, that became one of the issues around her relationship. So again, that history, where she feels that sex is the pleasure for the man, and this is one of the questions that I always get my clients to ask their partner: is sex something that you give me, or is this something that we share within a relationship? And this is one of the issues that I find with places where she looks at you as a pervert for actually trying to talk about it, is because she views sex as something that she gives, and it's something that is for your pleasure, and there's no way of her to see it as something that they share, which is something that where they can use as a place where they can connect. So again, when it comes to sitting your partner down, it's one of those things that is becomes very important to understand. Okay, what is that history? And again, some of it is not just the history; it's just how they view sex in total. So, is it something that we share? Is it something that you give? Is very important to understand. So, in this case, where he's now trying to sit her down and talk, there's this projection stuff that is going on where she's trying to navigate those uncomfortable feelings or whatever is causing her to have long periods of not having sex. Again, some of it is because she feels like, I've done my duty here, I've ticked this box, I'm not going to tick that box again for the next whatever several weeks. And it is concerning that the guy is absolutely suffering, and she obviously feels uncomfortable around sex. So she feels more of a victim here rather than actually see that the whole relationship is decaying because of this. So it's like with many situations like this, most men are willing to work through it or go through a lot of pain before that, and we call it like elastic band. So most men will allow that long suffering band to keep going. Lack of sex, being treated like being called a pervert, being called some sort of sex pest, whatever. All of that is going to happen. He's going to keep trying to be faithful. He's going to try and do all his best to keep the relationship going, and at some point it's going to snap. And for this guy, he's probably going to come to a point where when he snaps, he's either going to cheat, or the other one is just going to be like, okay, I've had enough of this, I'm going to move on. And generally, most men arrive to this point around the 50s, when the kids, when it's now empty nesting time, they actually choose, do I want to continue this relationship because now it's just the two of us, and this person has been absolutely horrible towards me when it comes to trying to get connection, completely ignored the needs that I need in sense of connection. Do I need to continue with this? And usually when they continue, they resent their partner for the rest of their life. They have horrible marriages. I think everybody knows those are really old people that have got terrible marriages where it's completely toxic. And then, or he decides to look after himself, which he says, you know what, we've failed to grow. Based on this, we've failed to grow together to get to a point where we can actually connect and have a fulfilling relationship. So therefore, I'm going to find a way for us to grow separately, which then generally this is where you can see that the divorce rate amongst people 50-year-olds and people that are around that age is pretty high, especially when they become empty nesters. So, and that's one of the reasons why this situation is most likely going to end up with one of those where he's either going to cheat or eventually he's going to be in that situation. And again, it's that victim mindset from the woman. She feels like this whole sex thing is being blown out of proportion. I'm the victim here, so why is it that it's my responsibility to do it? And it's like really convoluted stuff that is going on that is really needs to be addressed here. There's a few things that you can do in order to address this. Personally, my my best advice would be don't talk about sex, uh, because you've got no skill in order to convey that sort of type of message, conveyed in a way that's collaborative. And here it's more about these are my feelings that are terrible, and these terrible feelings that I feel is because you are not doing what you you're doing these terrible things to me. Basically, when you sit them down and say these are terrible feelings, because it's putting that responsibility onto the other person. That this is how I feel bad because there's lack of sex, and it's in its own way you're telling them that they're messing up in the relationship without actually telling them that they're messing up in the relationship. There's no other way they can interpret it but messing up in the relationship. So this is a very interesting concept when you think about it. That okay, so how do I approach it in a way that's going to be collaborative? That they don't they see that they're messing up, but they also feel a sense of responsibility towards building things up. And this is where it becomes very important to actually understand how do I do that. And like I said, within a reignited men or within the driving tribesmen, this is exactly how we teach you. And like this is exactly what you're supposed to do, and this is how you're supposed to say it, and this is how you're supposed to be. I'm not specifically holding back information by saying by being vague, but because for every situation is going to be different. And this is why some of the internet information I resent, because it's a cookie cutter type information that all couples just sit it down and tell her how you feel is a terrible idea. It might work with some people that have take personal responsibility for building the relationship, but it doesn't account for those people that already feel like they're a victim, people that already feel like sex is already a massive problem because of whatever is influencing from her past. So it doesn't take that into account, and that person will be not most likely not want to take responsibility for it, and therefore they will gaslight you. They'll probably call you sort of names and shame you and blame you in order for you to never have that conversation. And again, like I said, there's in terms of the structure on how to have the conversation around this, you have to actually understand. I mean, within Reignited Men, we teach the guys that she will always give you resistance, and the resistance always goes in a sequence, and that sequence is always she was going to shame you, she's going to blame you, and again, within those shaming and blaming, and in fact, she's going to be dismissive, she's going to shame you, and she's going to blame you, and then at that point, she'll then go internal. But you have to be doing certain things in order for that to happen. So obviously, you have to take into account what's the past, what has caused this situation, what was the first time the decline started happening. So what are the circumstances that happened then? So obviously, that's the reason why I cannot give you this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing in order, because it's not cookie cutter. Like I said, when it comes to it, I probably need to understand a little bit more about your situation before I can tell you, okay, this is how I would say, this is exactly what I would say, and this is how she would respond, and this is how you should respond to that response. So again, hopefully this has been absolutely helpful. I don't think I need to finish the video because that's the section that we needed to react to pretty much. But I'll just run it just in case there's something else that I can react to.
Even try to initiate the talk without even mentioning something negative or a date, but she'll just start to be annoyed and gaslighting me. I just want to know. What's the problem? There is still some affection and love, but just no sex. For example.
So yeah, I think he ends on to say, he's tried to come with a softer approach, and again, how do you tell somebody they're messing up without telling them they're messing up? Sit them down and tell them how you feel. is the quickest way to tell them that they're messing up. And definitely most of people will take the stance of, you know, instead of them taking the personal responsibility, they'll then look at you and then try and point places where you're messing up. And again, most people do that, where instead of, it's very few people that can say, okay, I see where I'm messing up, let me do it, let me take responsibility and get something, let me do something to change this situation. So yeah, definitely, when it comes to also looking at a relationship, I can see that there's some there's some flaws with this guy. I think there's also that measuring of really setting standards within his relationship, instead of talking about the lack of sex. I think sometimes, or in fact large chunk of the time, it's more about behavior, because it's not a thing that you can logically talk about and then it's going to somehow work. In fact, they always say this, that if she turns around and she does actually take personal responsibility, generally she will feel pretty bad about her involvement, or at least contribution towards the sexless relationship. And that feeling of sadness will not convert to seduction or arousal. So talking about it is a very, very bad idea, without the skills to actually do so. So I mean, because a lot of it, you are going to have a conversation around it, but you have to know exactly what you're doing in order to have that conversation. So I'm going to knock it on the head here. In order to learn how to do this, we've got, there's a link below which is going to take you to a free training and start showing you exactly what's the thriving tribesman method of actually changing a sexless relationship. And it's going to take you through the 3 secrets that we have in order to change a sexless relationship. The training is called the Attraction into Seduction Playbook. So it actually shows you exactly what that looks like. And so it's good. It's really good training that we've just finished creating. So go click the link below and it's going to take you to the training. Thank you very much. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Take care.